Good morning. We're going to do an animated review on an animated series. Let's be as animated as we could. We are always animated. We're going to do a review on anime from a Christian perspective. Today, we're looking at Sword Art Online, the immersive virtual reality game where you check in, but you don't check out.
The Roach Motel of video games.
Yes. So grab your coffee and let's dig in. We're reviewing only season 1 and only up to episode 14 because it really does change after that, right?
It really changes. There's a lot of... Yeah, it really takes a different spin.
And in a minute, you'll discover why. We'll get into it a little bit more. In the far distant future of the year 2022, are any of us going to live that long to see that? Gamers line up at the launch day for Sword Art Online, a hotly anticipated, massively multiplayer online role-playing game. That's a mouthful.
MMORPG.
Yes. The game, I had to say that because
some people might V. I think they put a V in front of it, so it's like virtual MMORPG LMNOP.
Yeah. Okay,
QT.
We'll go for that.
XYZ.
The game lets players connect to an immersive virtual reality world with some special helmets called nerve gear. Plug in and they give the gamer a full sensory experience. Except they said you don't feel pain in there, right? So the game players connect this way, and Kirito is one such gamer who is eager to jump back into action, having been a beta tester for the game. The players soon discover that they are unable to log out. Dun, dun, dun.
You're stuck.
Death in the game means death in the real world. Trapped within this game by its creator, players must navigate the perilous world to reach the game's final level of 100 and to secure their freedom. Kirito, a skilled player and a natural loner, reluctantly forms alliances and faces virtual and real-world challenges as he strives to unravel the mysteries behind their imprisonment and ensure the survival of himself and his companions. All right. A spoiler-free rating. We're going to dive into a deeper rating review, but that will be with spoilers. So we're just going to do a real quick pre-spoiler review. And would you recommend this to
Would I recommend this? Yes. Do keep in mind that this is coming. It's coming from Japan, so they do have a different view on. They definitely have a different view on violence. They have a different view on gore. They have a different view on what is funny, as well as what is extremely sexual.
Yeah, nudity.
So you do keep that in mind. Now, as far as this one particularly, there's no nudity in it. There is a risque scene later on in the series.
You see a nice looking animated female in underwear a couple of times, right?
Yep. That's what I'm referring to. And then other than that, that's about it. There's a classification for anime called fan service that they don't really do too much in this, thankfully.
Okay.
So there's that aspect of it that's not in there. So keep aware of that.
So the first 2 seasons don't show any blood. There's like virtual blood. There's practically.
You mean episodes?
No, first 2. I'm talking about the first 2 seasons.
Oh,
don't show any real blood. They shift later in the later seasons.
Yeah.
So we're just doing the first. We're not really suggesting anybody watch this. This isn't a suggestion for it. There's PG level profanity in there. I guess. I would say episode 10 shows some torture. You have a bad guy doing some bad things to a good character. I don't want to say any spoilers with that. I don't even remember which one it is, but it's just like the guy is just nasty, brutal. And then in typical anime fashion, camera angles tend to focus on female tushies and some upskirt type of things, but you don't see anything, just underwear, stuff like that. So it doesn't
keep that stuff in mind. Again, the Japanese find that a lot culturally. That's extremely funny to them, so it's like a joke.
Yeah, there were some scenes like "Don't look at me," and you have two characters that are married, and it's like, well, don't look at me. What? But anyway, so that's probably the extreme of it. I wouldn't suggest for younger viewers, for kids. If you do have, if you're gonna let your kids watch it with them. And it's but overall some good storyline to this.
And there's a lot of thought-provoking concepts. This is really the first one in anime that really took off, that was dealing with this sort of topic of being locked away about virtual reality. What is real? What happens if you actually die in virtual reality, and it fries your brain?
So this is coming off of last week we did Free Guy, and there's a lot of parallels between this, but there's differences too. Free Guy is about a character, an NPC, a non-player character, who it becomes an AI and becomes self-aware, and what happens with the whole deal there. This one is kind of the flip side. It's a real person who gets locked into the game, and not just one person, but 10,000 or something like that. I think we're in there because they were limited. There were limited copies going out. Now you can see why they were limited copies. But so overall suggestion, would you say this is
for teenagers? I'd say that this is good. I would recommend, again, if you're a parent, watch it first, get a feel for it, look at what is there, and use discernment.
Yeah, it might cross the line for some people, so it would generally use discernment. But we're going to be talking about some points here in a world where that's filled with game adventure and emotional relationship. That's a big part of the storyline too. Where are there any Christian themes that can be pulled out of any lessons that you can get from the story? And I think there are a few that can be done. You don't need to see the whole thing to be able to pull these lessons out, and you can have these discussions with people too. One of those would be, is there a world more real than ours outside of our realm? Dun, dun, dun. It's another Free Guy theme that we were talking about last week. You can also be pulled into this one. There's also just a real quick sneak peek about what we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes here. There's also some real stories of heroism that are done in here, which you get in a lot of stories, but I think it's lacking in some movies that are out now. You don't have the hero held up. You have a lot of anti-hero stuff that's going on right now too. So from here on out, we have spoiler territory.
Oh boy. Now we can get in the fun stuff.
Beware. If you haven't seen this, if you haven't seen the series and do want to see it and do not want to be kind of have it ruined a little bit for you on some of the scenes we're going to talk about, you may want to turn this off now and then come back, watch it, and then come back and watch us later. We're looking for any kind of viewer feedback, and I believe before we
have someone in the chat. He hasn't watched Free Guy yet.
Oh, okay. I'll throw this up there. Haven't watched Free Guy. Well, you know what? It's good. I enjoyed it.
And there's a redeeming quality in the end that, as we were talking about it, you can see the light turn on.
Oh, yeah. We had an on-the-air light bulb experience.
And it redeemed the entire thing, making it a great gateway into the gospel.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So getting into spoiler territory, what did you like?
What I like the concept. One of the things that I've watched a lot of anime. One of the things I like about anime, and I think has really made anime take off in the Western, I guess, entertainment realm, is the fact that they are willing to explore a concept. They're willing to throw a concept to it and give it a shot for 12 episodes and see what happens. You get some really weird concepts going on. You know, the time I was reincarnated as a vending machine. So you get some weird sort of stuff going on, but it's also interesting because you get different things you get to explore. I think one of the major drives that's driving up anime right now is the fall apart of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Just absolutely the
You know
same
what?
thing
They
all the time. And it's like, okay,
well,
anime's
okay.
doing
So
well,
so it seems like they've really gotten into a rut. Maybe it's just because they don't want to take any chances on something. There's just a culture in Hollywood that seems to say we're only going to do stuff that's familiar with people because we know it's worked, but we're going to make it the same but different. We're going to make it different by flipping the gender of the main character or people that are in it, and then or flipping the race or ethnicity of different characters in it. That will make it really good, and will score some points with a certain demographic, and so but it just ends up being so stifling. And we don't, so oftentimes we don't want to see our beloved characters change like that.
And it's not something that they are doing in anime. A lot of times they're just exploring these new, different concepts, and again,
they're willing to take chances.
Women are the main characters in some of them, men are the main characters in others.
Yeah.
And I mean, they explore the concepts, and I do enjoy that. And again, you got to be very discerning because there's a lot of garbage out there.
Right, a lot
of garbage. Just be aware there's a lot of garbage with this.
Yeah.
So be discerning. Do not I would highly recommend that you preview any anime that you're going to let your kids watch,
or your husband.
I wouldn't recommend that one. I'm just saying that out front because it takes a long time to get
it does
anime.
It does. So, and some of these you can watch at faster speed, so
so that's one of the concepts I think is one of the reasons why anime is doing so well in the West is because of this
stifling.
Yes, the stifling
and Hollywood does have the chance to be able to do stuff. There are a lot of writers out there with good fresh material, a lot. And you want to shake Hollywood and say, guys, hello,
try something new.
Yeah,
be adventurous. I mean, every time they've tried something newish, not every time, but quite a few times, definitely recently, when something new, either an indie publisher comes out with something or something along those lines, normally they do pretty decent, even if it's kind of crappy, just because it's the audience has something different to look at.
Yeah.
I mean, they what is it? The Marvels is trying to sell. Disney's trying to say, well, you got superhero fatigue. I look and say, I can look at a lot of animes that have a lot of superheroes in it, and there's no fatigue there.
Yeah.
It's just we're tired of the same thing being served to us. Now, one of the interesting concepts that they do on this one is that character's death equals the death of the individual in the real world.
You're talking about with SAO,
SAO. Okay. Going back to what the topic.
Yeah, that would be good. I was going to steer this out. Really gone broad with this one.
Okay, shifting back.
Shifting back.
This is the topic for today. Is not why anime is so popular. It is talking about the Sword Art Online and what the concepts are that's revealing. Now, I think they handled player death very well. They're able to drive the story through that in a couple of situations. And I think if you use the death of a character correctly, it can lead to a lot of good desire to continue, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of intrigue.
It moves the story along. There's a focus on emotion in this story. That's one thing that really caught me too. It wasn't just a bunch of fight scenes, animated fight scenes, and you go from boss level to boss. I almost thought that was going to happen because just like in games, you would level up, and as your skill level increases, so does the challenge, and so you have each level would have a boss that you have to defeat before you go on to the next one, right? But it really didn't focus on that as much. It focused more on the emotion, and I don't know if it's just. It seems to me to be a typical Japanese storyline or focus on the tragic event where you have this beloved character who dies, and then you have another maybe a love interest or something like that, and she dies. But what's really good about this is I think they did a very good job on handling the emotion, not just the tragic, but also the really wanting to be there with somebody. You had a child that was involved, and the child of the main character is not really a child, but it was an AI creation. But okay, here's another example. The main character Kirito went out and he had to defeat this boss so he can get this revive item. He can revive a friend of his who lost, and he blames himself for her tragic loss. It was Sashi, and he defeats the boss, and he has this revive item. And then at the end, you just see him you don't even see the fight. You just see him come out afterwards, and he tosses this device to his friend and says, "Here, you can have this." And his friend says, "What?" He says, "It must be administered within the first 10 seconds after the person dies."
Which makes sense within the story. Yeah. It's like, you've gone through this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yes, you've gone through this whole thing. And again, you don't see the fight. You don't see that. But his friends had to struggle for him. Give him the opportunity to get this. He goes in there, beats the boss, gets the victory item, and it's nothing that he can use.
Nope.
And he does not succeed in his goal.
So sad.
And it's very well done in that emotional draw, and there's a lot of character development through that. You start off with Kirito, which is he's just a loner. He's just there to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not an ally to anyone. He's just soloing this.
Right.
And as the story progresses, you see how he needs to have others.
Yeah, and it's not, even though this is an episodes and they're short, it's not really episodic writing where everything resets at the beginning again.
It matters.
This is more like chapters of a story, of a book. And that's why we're looking just at episode 1 through 17, because it's even though it's the season continues going, it stops right there pretty much with an idea or concept. It's self-cohesive. It's its own story within that series. I'm going to throw some screenshots up here. So here's Kirito. And by the way, every time I hear his name, it's it's transliterated because it's in Japanese, Kirito. Every time I hear it, because you trill the R, Kirito. It's not Kirito like Dorito, it's Kirito. And when I heard that the first time, I immediately thought of this.
Kitty toes.
And I kept hearing kitty toes every time I heard his name. So he's locked in, and here's the guy says, "Welcome to the game. By the way, you guys can't get out, and if you try to get out, you're going to die because the headgear, the nerve gear that you're putting on, is it'll kill you. So, and if you die in the game, you die. The only way we can get out is you have to defeat the boss at the top." And here's Kirito, and oh gosh, what is her name? Starts with an A. Help me out here. Don't tell me you forgot. You forgot. Okay. I will come back to her name. Help me out. Help me out here, people. Okay. So yeah, something like that. It.
Told you.
I had it written down. Now I don't see my notes.
Asana.
Yes, Asana. I was thinking an M.
Asana.
But
I've said it multiple times.
Yeah. So she's back there. He does team up. He's basically a loner, and this is the two of them together. And there really is this. We're in spoiler territory, so I can say this budding relationship that ends up in marriage. Okay, in this world, and then they try to find themselves later, afterwards. So, and then they are also defeating the bosses, and overall, the animation is pretty good. I think the storyline and again the emotions that go into it are the best. So that's what I would say, that the writers did a really good job of hitting those emotions and going on.
Yeah, I think that they really drove it well with the emotional aspect of it. I mean, there are multiple animes that are out there that have thought-provoking concepts and good emotional driven. This is definitely one that I would put on the psychological side of things, because it's really an analysis of what the impacts are of being stuck in this sort of death game.
Oh yeah.
How that impacts people, and it shows a variety of how people deal with this sort of situation. Some of them just say, you know what, forget it, I'm not leaving this safe town, I'm going to stay here, right here, and I'm going to work on my skill set and maybe help other people out. Others are just like, I just don't want to deal with anything. Some people, you know what, become suicidal.
Yeah. And so
there's deal with that. And I mean, they're not shying away from any of these darker concepts and showing the impacts that they make on this. And then you've got the people who, you know what, strap down, grit through it, and try their best to help other people while succeeding and getting out of here.
Yeah. So you imagine if you were, and I was going to plan to do this a little bit later, but imagine yourself immersed in this and you have no way out. What are you going to do? Are you going to be the person who takes advantage of everybody? Are you going to be the person who tries to help everybody out? Are you going to be the person who tries to defeat the boss so everybody can get out then? Or are you just going to say, I just need to survive? I'm locked in survival mode. So Kirito is the good guy dressed in black, traveling from town to town, helping people in need, including damsels in distress. Very noble, right? That's how it starts out anyway. And he's an endearing character. And this is one of the things I was talking about before, is that a lot of times we lack, we need this mythology of a hero. So we could say, I want to be like this person. This person is noble and good in the face of darkness and disaster. I want to aspire to be somebody like this. The complex issues created by the rules of the game world, from safe zones to little girl AIs, they were created for emotional support for the players. That was that one AI that came in.
It was a psychological.
All this is Yui.
Yep.
Yui, yeah.
Yui.
Those darn show writers. You didn't need to kill her. So,
kill her.
Sorry, I'm dealing with trauma.
Someone might got a little bit
invested. No, not at all. But they did a good job, I think, showing a compelling story and digging into the world. What would it be like? This is something where it could have just been glossed over and just focused on all the fighting, but they didn't. They delved into it. So those are some of the things I liked. Some of the things. There was something here that you may not have caught. You wouldn't have caught this knowing. There's a little bit of background to the story, and so the original story was based on a novella series, and that novella started with a short story, and it was intended as an entry into a short story contest. Well, the author went way over the word limit, like double the word limit.
Real quick,
for that,
before you continue, for those laymen out there that don't know what a novella is, what is a novella?
A novella is, and I don't know if this was technically a novella because it was written in Japanese, so I don't know. But a novella is a shorter novel. You go by word count. So you go short story, novella, and novel. And I think the breaking point is between. I'd have to look this up again, but I think it might be around from 10 or 15,000 words to 30 or 40,000 words. That would be a novella, and then beyond that would be a novel.
Okay, so it's a short book.
Yes,
that was turned into an anime.
It was turned into an anime. It was a series. It was as far as I know, it's a series of these. Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. They really know. But the point was, he wanted to enter this into a contest, couldn't, because the word count was too big, and then said, "Okay, I'm just gonna sell this independently. I'm not going to look for a publisher or anybody. I'm just going to self-publish this." And he did, and it took off. And so that's comfort for any authors out there to say, I'm struggling with this. Maybe it will take off. Maybe not. There are good success stories, a lot of them, where authors do become independent. Again, the Hollywood gatekeepers keeping things tight. And then they really do take off. It's not common, but it does happen. So there is a point for that. So what didn't you like?
Well, real quick here, before we dive into that, one more thing on that aspect of some of the things that they explore. I think one of the interesting one was Laughing Coffin. Laughing Coffin basically is a assassin's guild.
Oh, yeah.
Or a death guild, as they referred to it. It was an interesting concept because their view was, we don't know if this is really killing people. We're just going to play it as if it's a normal video game and do whatever we want. And, yeah, there's no real proof that anyone's dying on it. It's just another interesting aspect of the psychological mindset that you could see develop from this. Now, again, I would edge on the side of caution on just outright murdering people, because that's, not a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the list of bad side of it, but it was an interesting concept to bring up. Now, again, one of my favorite episodes is when the pet dies and goes, the Laughing Coffin shows up to take out the girl, and Kirito's there like, no. It really does show how some video games are broken, because he basically points out the mechanics, saying basically if you're high enough level, you heal faster than they can do damage to you.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, we could do this all day. I can just stand here. You could just beat the crap out of me, and I would heal up faster than you're hurting me.
Right.
So it's funny game mechanics.
So well thought through. So there's different angles in this that they explored with, and again, being willing to explore something. This is science fiction. Science fiction is speculative. Technically, I guess this would fall under science fiction, but it's speculative fiction. What if? Asking that question, what if? And when you do that, you kind of delve into. You have to be able to delve deeply into the world, because the world then provides a lot of story material in itself. So things that we didn't like. What would you say that you didn't?
I didn't like the fact that it changed early. I didn't like the fact that it ended early. As far as the interesting side, that's why we're only doing the first 14 episodes, is because I didn't think it was that
14 or 17.
It's 14 episodes that we're reviewing today.
Oh.
And then after that, it was just...
Sorry, that was 17.
It changes. It becomes a lot more sexual in a lot of ways. And the stakes all change to just being personal for Kirito himself, and not the overall everyone in this, because they solve it. They all get out of the game. Everyone that's still alive gets out of the game, and it gets out early, and it's abrupt, and it's like, wait, hold on.
And I did see some criticism on jumping from level to level so quickly and not delving into why, he one episode he's on level maybe 10, and the next episode he's on level 20. It doesn't show anything in between. It maybe references some of the stuff.
Poor job on progression.
I don't know if I would necessarily say that's poor, because it's one thing in writing that you want to do is you want to start a scene late and end it early, because it can something can really drag. And if you pull out in the next episode some of the stuff that he has already acquired and say, okay, just like when he killed that one boss and he had the regeneration prize afterwards.
Yeah.
And you don't really need to see the fights, because slashy, okay, he wins, that type of thing. The main thing was the prize afterwards. So I would like to see what happens in there, but that is actually kind of good, because you'd rather have the watcher or the reader want to know more than to say, that's too much.
Well, again, I think they should have expanded more on this sort of concept where you've got to continue with this death game until you get to the final 100 level. Instead of cutting it off early, I would have liked to have seen a more... I see what you're saying, show the highlights where the best of the best interactions. And yeah, you get that in any show. You see something skip years between scenes in some shows, definitely in some animes. And it's fine with that. And the progression a bit more obvious going from section to section. I do admit that it might get, he has to balance being repetitive with some of the topics. It's not just the same thing each episode, and it really doesn't matter.
See, if you're playing, if you're involved, each episode would be, or each level would be important. But if you're watching somebody else do it, it's different because you're not engaged on the same level.
Yeah, it's a passive interaction. Now, again, I think they should be having the high emphasis on the psychological aspects of this. I think was extremely valuable. I think that could have been pulled out more. Definitely with the rest of the levels that they did not explore. I think they could have done a better job with the twist of the main supervillain instead of just having him definitely at the end where he's asked, well, why do you do this? And he says, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So I was going to bring that up as one of my points too. And I actually have the quote here. At the end, Kirito says, why? Why did you do this? Why did you trap us all in here and have this basically a death game? And he said, what's the point? And the programmer said, I don't know. It's been so long. I have forgotten the reason.
It's the lamest excuse ever. It's like you've killed. You've become the mass murderer and you don't know why.
This is Luke Skywalker throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder. You had an opportunity to really nail a point in, some big reason behind it all. But the motive was, that was honestly, I think that was lame.
There's been multiple parodies off of this, and one of the ones that I remember from a long time ago addressed this episode pretty decently. Basically said, the guy says, it was a bug in the game, and I kind of just rolled with it. I mean, I had to meet the requirements of the deadline. And once it happened, we couldn't fix it. And everyone was locked in here. And I just didn't want to own up to it because of my contract with Bethesda.
Yeah.
So it's just a Bethesda title with bugs.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah, that was too much. I don't want to spend too much time on what we didn't like, so I'm just going to throw a couple others in there. There was a lot of, I don't know what. It's like Kirito was this great, cool dude. He had all these aspects, just like he was super, super cool loner. But when it came to Asuna, his sweetheart, he just kowtowed to her and was like, just whatever you want, honey, whatever you want. And I've been in a marriage relationship for a very, very long time, over 30 years. And you work things out with each other and stuff like this. But, dude, seriously, pull up your britches. She threatens him. Now, this is really bad. She threatens him with violence, forks, knives, strangulation, until he cowers and submits. Now, this is abuse. If it were flipped the other way, if he were to threaten her with a knife, you'd have all sorts of feminists and everybody saying, no, don't, you cannot threaten a woman. But and I've seen this a lot of other things too. If a woman threatens a guy, at first it was kind of funny because it would be like a flip. It's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Ha ha ha. You got this big, strong, powerful guy, and he's like kowtowing this. But it ended up being a constant thing, and it's abuse. I mean, let's say put it for what it is. It's wrong. So also, they were married. And all this they had this relationship, and Asuna didn't even know Kirito. I'm going to say this: Kirito's real name and age. And so they got married. Spoiler: he's 16 and she's 17. So our ancestors, not too long ago, 100 years ago or so, were married at a young age, younger than what we have now. And this would be like really taboo. Oh my gosh, she's 16 and he's She's 17. He's 16. So you got that going on too. But not so much the age thing. It's not an issue with me. But he doesn't know. It's not a big issue. It's pointing out that's like, what? You got to be kidding me. Didn't even know what his name or age was, and they were together that long. So Christian themes. Want to pull some of this out in here, and to say that what were some themes that you saw that were in the story that you'd say, hey, if you were going to talk to somebody, want to point them towards Jesus, what would you
There's
say?
always this has been pretty consistent in a lot of them, because this is a pretty typical one. It's the self-sacrificing. It's willing to sacrifice oneself for others. There's that. And this one is very powerful with this one, as far as this next point, is the relationships. It's all about relationships. And that's something that Christianity is all about. It's a relationship with God. God wants that relationship with us. It gets into morality, with what drives your morality. Is it because, again, we talked about Laughing Coffin. We talked about these death guilds that are saying, well, we don't know that people are actually dying. I mean, we just know that they're disconnected from the game. You're just taking basically this nuts guy who locked us all in this game. You're taking his word that it's actually killing people. Do you really trust this guy?
That's a good question.
I mean, he doesn't have a good track record.
Right.
So,
okay, well, let me bounce off that before we go on to the next one. How would you respond if you knew that your death was around the corner? And this goes from everybody from the death cult that was in there killing everybody to someone who says, I'm just going to stay and be on the sidelines. I'm not even going to delve in there, to all the different reactions that were in there. How would you respond if you were locked into this kind of environment? And what kind of moral dilemmas would you face? Would you take a hero role? Would you pull back and say, I'm going to talk to other people about different things? Well, how would you respond to it? So I think that's a good question that you can ask people and be a good point of conversation.
I think that's a good one. I mean, in Christianity, of course, we believe that our death is gain. If we die for the cross, we gain. You know, our death is around the corner. We don't control when we die. We just control what we do with the time we are given.
Right.
And I think that is inherent within Christianity. I know that, like, from the secular worldview, it's a lot of it's just, get as much enjoyment out of this life as you can. You only go around once. Let's just try to enjoy it as much as possible. But from the Christian perspective, it is salvation, the message of salvation. The opportunity to enter into the kingdom of heaven should be offered to every individual that is out there. And we should do everything we can to try to spread the gospel and to help redeem as many people as possible, at least given the opportunity.
So another one is identity and self-discovery. This is it. It is like the whole point of this anime series too, other than being locked in, is who you are, and who you are as a person here might develop differently than who you are as a person in the real world, because you're faced with different situations and different opportunities. So that was kind of the title of this live stream, is real versus reality. And this is kind of a message. It's a little bit of a tangent here. Some people get locked into gaming. They get pulled in. And this might be a message that you could give to someone else who's locked into gaming all the time, looking for that dopamine hit, always just this hamster wheel of always getting back into it, always getting back into it, always get back into it. The real world has consequences. Once you turn off a game, there's nothing there. It's done. Now you might have a save game and you get your character and stuff, but once you level up, I mean, what's the point?
There's nothing of eternal value inherent within the entertainment itself.
Right.
And if if you're playing with other people, I could see there being a value to those relationships built up. But if there's nothing of the eternal in that, then it's still empty in the long run.
Yeah. So real quickly, another one would be relationships and sacrifice. There was a lot of that in this, more so than Fall Guy. I mean, there was some in Fall Guy, but this really dealt with relationships and sacrifices on that regard. Kirito was self-sacrificing. That's why I think he was a good hero. He would go out and help people, willing to lay his life down for others. Even he had that one army that goes in there to try to defeat that boss, and he goes in. He says, "I'm not going to these guys." He doesn't even know these guys, and he does this. So I think
on top of that, they specifically went in there against his advice.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Do not do this. Mm-hmm. Don't go down this avenue. It's a bad idea."
Yeah.
And they went down the avenue, and he's standing there at the outside looking at these guys getting wiped out because they didn't listen to him. And he still chooses to go in there at what he considered a very bad idea.
Yeah.
And go in and basically try to solo this boss because of this situation.
Yeah. And well, but to those guys' defense, they were following orders. This was an army, and their captain was the guy who was being the idiot and said, "Let's go in." So those guys are saying, "Okay, we're responsible to follow orders." So they went in and did it. And they were just getting wiped out left and right. It's a suicide mission. So you do have that friendship and love and sacrifice, and that's also where Asuna, the relationship develops with her, and redemption and second chances too is another part. This is something that comes up a lot in other stories and movies, but I think one thing that's different here is this has consequences outside of this virtual world, that you have redemption in relationship, second chances. Do you give someone else a second chance if that person is ready to turn their back on you? This happened with a betrayal that was in the story. He does give this person a second chance, and he finds out that this person isn't a part of the assassins. And that's where the torture happens in episode 10. So you got to be careful. Trust is built up. Respect is not something that's automatically given. Respect is earned. It's built up over time. Then would you go ahead
real quick on that before we continue? Go back to the whole morality thing, because that's really drives this, the different views of morality, and where you get your morality from is critical. Because if you are someone who says, well, we just define morality ourselves, what is good, we're the ones who decide what is good and what's bad, then there's nothing wrong with what the Murder Guild did, because they just defined it as being morally correct.
Yep.
If you say, well, culturally, as far as the overall human species goes, what is good for the human species itself is what is moral and immoral. Again, that relies on the individual to make the judgment for the entire species of what they could perceive is moral.
So I got a counter argument to that. Not I think what you're saying is true. If you say whatever, if you're going to use as the basis for your morality is say whatever is good for the human race, that is the benchmark that I'm using for all other morality springs out of that. You have just sanctioned genocide, because there have been plenty of people in history to say it is for the good of the people, the nation, the species, to wipe out a group of people because they are holding us back. They're pinning us down. They're the dregs of society. We need to head for something future. And you can think of all sorts of examples about that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this is a good idea or anything, but I could see, based off of that morality, someone arguing, saying, hey, anyone that has an IQ below 100, we just need to euthanize them.
By definition, half of the human race.
So that, because IQ, there's a large part of IQ that is genetic, and that by only allowing the cream of the crop to survive we are then making the human race better.
Yeah.
And
that's a bad idea.
Stupid idea.
You have some very smart people doing some very amoral things out there.
And again, it counts on your morality. So if you go by the Christian morality, which is the absolute morality that God himself defines morality, and he's the one who has the final say on it, then even in this, you would end up needing to be good in this virtual reality, because you got to err on the side of caution when it comes to the death of individuals. So even if the guy is lying and it actually doesn't mean it, it actually just means that they get out of the game and, you know, they enter into the real world, which was, again, Laughing Coffin's point of view. It's like, hey, they just get out. So they get an easy way out.
So if you do have a supreme God who is watching over everything and to whom you are accountable to, your actions have bearing on your relationship with him inside and outside of the game.
Yep.
Is that what you're saying?
What you do there matters in the long run, even if no one's there to record it.
Okay. That would make sense, because those are still your decisions that you're making. And those decisions do have consequences on other people. Yeah, I think it has somebody to do that.
So just want to hit that. I know that there is someone in the live chat that mentioned about morality.
Which one is that right here?
Morals right there. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, is one and the same. My morals would be the same. Exactly. Yeah. So would you be the same person inside and outside the game? The same thing could be said if someone said that your true nature is shown when no one else is around, when no one else is watching you. How do you act and respond? And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but we kind of do act differently, knowing whether we're being watched or whether we're not being watched. And in this game, yeah, your actions and morality, I think, should be the same. So, all right, great. Is there, what's that?
What we got coming up?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, don't want you to forget about it.
No, I won't. All right, tomorrow we're going to delve into a topic about Christian aliens. Do I think there are Christian aliens? No. Do I think there are aliens? Maybe, but maybe some of them are Christian. Who knows? We're going to look into the theology of this. We're not going to look so much from the scientific standpoint to say whether, alien life forms are existing or they're carbon based, and all those questions are really kind of dealt with and answered by other people. But this is more from a Christian standpoint to say, if there were alien sentient beings on other planets, what does that do to Christian theology? Does it challenge it in certain ways? So we're going to delve into that, and it is dealing with science fiction on the way. And this is an example of how science fiction crosses theology. I think it's a really good concept to delve into, some thought-provoking questions. And then on Wednesday, we're going to look at Star Trek Voyager, an isolated journey in Christian ethics. Again, the question, what do you do when no one's watching? How do your ethics change? And this would be different circumstances too. And there's other questions that come with Voyager, and we'll do a general review and an overview of the entire series. I'd like to do some specific episodes, but this is just for the series itself. So until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.